Diablo 4's story has only just been revealed, but within Act 1 sits a prominent piece of text that spells out the path the story is set to take. Much like the End of Days prophecy of Diablo 3, the prophecy of Rathma of Diablo 4 guides us into unfolding the drama in the Age of Enmity, but this time, in more than just the musings of a time-weary sage. May he ever rest in peace. Blizzard! Damn butterflies. However, the language of this prophecy may seem a bit on the nose, and for good reason. So let's dive in and examine in detail Rathma's prophecy and see if we can divine its true meaning in Diablo 4. The prophecy reads, I saw my corpse, and from my mouth crawled hatred. A father burned his children on a pyre, and a mother moulded a new age from the ashes. I saw the weak made strong, a pack of lambs feasting on wolves. Tears of blood rained on a desert jewel, and the way to hell was torn asunder. Then came a spear of light piercing hatred's heart, and he who was bound in chains was set free. Rathma's prophecy. While we hadn't officially heard much out of Rathma, the first necromancer since the Sin War trilogy, suddenly he pops to take center stage by the events of Diablo 4, though not in the fashion that everyone had initially thought. Instead, the patron saint of necromancers has returned to lay out the foundation for the events to be seen in Diablo 4. And while we see this set up in Act 1, leaks have shown to continue to see the events prophesied throughout the remainder of the game, and multiple parties have taken it upon themselves to interpret it for their own ends. This version in particular is spoken throughout Inarius' cathedral, taken as prophesying the victory of the Father of Sanctuary, foreshadowing his return to heaven. But Inarius, in his vanity, has been blinded and found himself in the puppetry of another. It goes without saying that the prophecy is obscure, and it seems to make itself apparent in the most obvious places, while events happening around these moments are truly the points of which the prophecy speaks. And while I may seem to be talking in riddles, it's because before we continue on, I've got to say there are massive spoilers ahead for those who didn't play the beta and haven't been keeping up with any of the theories circulating. So, you've been warned.
It started in dreams. I saw shattered images of the end of Sanctuary. The scales of a great serpent carried these visions. And so I went to visit him. I and the serpent's thoughts met, and the fragmented future was mended together. I put it down in order, and the prophecy was born.
Now, assuming these lines are untouched from Rathma's original version, they certainly seem to back up Inarius' delusions, but additional context changes the tones of these lines greatly. So, enough gilding the lily, let's jump in. I saw my corpse, and from my mouth crawled hatred. Beginning with the most obvious segment, Rathma foresaw his own death. He saw no reason to avoid his fate and accepted it. After all, for those who understand the cycle like Rathma, death is not the end. Congruently, the deathless visage unique helmet tells us, Rathma is endless. He was the first ancient and will remain at the end. He is the master of the great cycle of being. When death comes for him, why should he fear it? Vauntus, acolyte of Rathma. As for the second part, from Brother Orlan at the Alabaster Monastery, we know that Inarius visited Rathma years before we begin our quest through the first act. It's then that it's presumed Inarius kills Rathma, impaling him with his own spear, as this is the first event in the prophecy, hatred crawling from Rathma's mouth. Presumably, it may refer to something to do with Lilith, being that she is the daughter of hatred, but recent revelations have placed Mephisto in the events we've witnessed thus far. Rathma would have no need to let Mephisto loose upon the world, so did he have something to do with perhaps preventing him from escaping? This part obviously remains more than slightly obscure. A father burned his children on a pyre. This line seems to be part of a grisly scene we witness at Corvalar, of Inarius' faithful burned upon a pyre as a form of honourable funerary rite. But when speaking to the townspeople in other areas, we learn that the ritual burnings and executions have been ordered to increase all over Fractured Peaks. This line takes a sinister turn as it becomes readily evident that not all is honour and justice under the cathedral's rule, and that the zealotry therein has gripped the land in steel and fire. A mother moulded a new age from the ashes. From said fire, the distraught and downtrodden under the cathedral's heel find new purpose in Lilith's mission. And this line continues into the next. I saw the weak made strong, a pack of lambs feasting on wolves. Emboldened by Lilith, we see the flock of the church turn on those who would wield the cathedral's laurels as weapons of subjugation, and commence to beat a priest to death and then turn Nevesk into a haven of sin, as we see unwary travellers drugged and even dragged off to be sacrificed, presumably to be cannibalized. The word feasting taking a very literal turn, Lilith then moves on to inspire more debauchery throughout the world, and we follow in her wake. Tears of blood rained on a desert jewel, and the way to hell was torn asunder. This is where the prophecy draws us into what we can only assume is a later point in the game. Desert Jewel has often been used in other references in Diablo lore to none other than Chaldeum. From this, we can surmise that Lilith's target is Chaldeum once she obtains the key to hell from Rathma. This also means she doesn't intend to go about it peacefully, and given Hakan has sealed the gates of Chaldeum from outsiders, and the Iron Wolves are no longer defending it from its interior, the future doesn't look bright for the capital of Keshistan. And from the release date announcement, we've seen firsthand Lilith does indeed make her way to hell, for what immediate reason remains unseen in full just yet. Then came a spear of light. The Spear of Light. Many interpretations have taken this to mean Solarian, Imperius's great spear that was forged in the heart of a dying star, while others may have taken notice Inarius rather ceremonially bathing his spear in the light in his monastery's open ceiling. But I personally think this may refer to Inarius himself and not the weapon per se. Piercing hatred's heart. But how does that fit in with this line? I think that first, hatred's heart doesn't speak of Lilith or even Mephisto's heart in some form. I initially speculated that this was Inarius' killing of Rathma that broke Lilith's heart, but given this happens in an order of events, it probably speaks more to the possibility of hatred's heart being a place, or perhaps even a vessel. And he who was bound in chains was set free. It's here that this much of the prophecy concludes and is envisioned by Inarius as his rapture into the high heavens, his glorious reward. But we've seen Mephisto also exists bound in a lupine vessel. Whatever the preceding events lead up to, it's evident that it won't result in the rapture of Inarius or his followers, but instead the liberation of a prime evil, and usher in the march of destruction upon Sanctuary. Other lines. It's not purely speculation that figures into this. In the first dungeon, we can find a scroll referred to as Burned Parchment, which lists off further lines from the prophecy, which I believe to be the unadulterated version that the church has appropriated, reading, I saw a serpent coiling in the fires of the eternal conflict, a wise man with 7 arms, a fog of lies, plagues of every name. I saw a child give birth to a mother, as hatred sunset, and that of terror and destruction dawned. A serpent coiling in the fires of the eternal conflict. This seems to refer to Trag'Oul, the very same serpent who sits at the fulcrum of balance betwixt the rival forces of heaven and hell. But coiled, perhaps, ready to strike? Was Rathma's death planned, and the two of them are making their own play? It was indeed the dragon Trag'Oul that was born into existence when Sanctuary was created as its own guardian, and outside of the forces of heaven and hell. A wise man with 7 arms. Could this be referring to Lorith, or perhaps an aspect of wisdom with 7 agents? I doubt Tyrael still lives. He wouldn't have sat still while Inarius made his play, but perhaps it's another creature that we're yet to see. And the rest of these lines are purely speculatory at best, but the last one, hatred, then terror and destruction. Similar to Josen, the demon hunter's observation of the synergy of the primevals, saying, destruction begets terror, as terror begets hate, as hate begets destruction. The primes are prophesied to appear to us in this sequence: hatred, terror, and then destruction. We've seen Mephisto, and whether we kill him in the base story or perhaps set him free, well, we know Diablo is soon to follow thereafter, and then his brother, the Lord of Destruction, Baal. It should be noted, the prophecy of Rathma is still unfolding before us, and all of this may not turn out to be true. It is indeed just a speculation video, but given what we've seen and what we can gather from the information already found from the various test builds, we currently see this as the most likely path. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. And, as always, see you in Sanctuary.
You are the last visitor to my sanctum. Though, you come too late, just as Lilith did before you. For it was my father, Inarius, who arrived here first. It unfolded as my visions foretold. How we hurtle towards the prophecy's end.